Do you know, Rachel Reeves came in with so much excitement because she was going to be the first female chancellor. Well, as a female, I'm thoroughly ashamed. She clearly has no idea what she's doing. Her first budget this time last year was an utter mess. If you want growth, you don't then go and put taxes on employers. Oh. People have lost their jobs. People are worried. All of us are worried. She's totally incompetent, and of course Keir Starmer put her there. I wish there hadn't been a first female chancellor, because at least I would have hoped the first female chancellor would be worthy of that position. Rachel Reeves is not worthy of any position, let alone in charge of our finances. But unfortunately she is, which is why every single one of us should be worried about the 26th of November.
Rachel Reeves entered office with the kind of media hype reserved for historic firsts. The first female chancellor, the technocrat who would steady the ship, the symbol of a modern, competent Britain. But the reality that has followed is nothing short of a spectacular letdown. Instead of redefining the role, Reeves has stumbled through it, projecting uncertainty, mixed messaging, and a striking lack of authority at precisely the moment the country needed clarity. Her early promises of competence have evaporated under the weight of her own decisions. Every major policy briefing has been riddled with contradictions. Every attempt to set a firm economic direction has collapsed into backpedaling and excuses. Rather than reassuring the public, Reeves has managed to inject more anxiety into an economy already stretched thin. It's no mystery why people are openly dreading the upcoming November 26 budget. Reeves has given them every reason to expect chaos. What makes her failure even more glaring is that she had the chance to prove that a woman in this role could deliver something stronger, smarter, and more disciplined than her predecessors. Instead, she has reinforced the very doubts she claimed she would shatter. Reeves was supposed to be the adult in the room, the steady economist with a plan. Instead, she looks like a figure constantly overwhelmed by the job she fought so hard to get. If Reeves wanted to make history, she has, just not in the way she intended. Rather than being remembered as the first woman to master the Treasury, she risks going down as the chancellor who couldn't control her own narrative, let alone the country's finances. At this point, the question isn't whether the public has lost confidence in her. It's whether she ever had any confidence in herself to begin with.
What are we to make of all this? Let's talk about the budget first and foremost, because it is very hard to argue that this hasn't had to have been ripped up and rewritten 2 or 3 times so far.
Yes, it's really quite shocking. You know, Labour came to power on a manifesto, and basically they seem to have ripped that up in so very many different ways, and of course brought in a lot of other things that they said they wouldn't do either, perhaps the Chagos Islands being one of the major ones on people's minds. But this constant U-turn, you know, and Kemi Badenoch, of course, the Conservative leader, is going for these constant U-turns. They were going to crack down on benefit claimants. That didn't happen as a rebellion from their Labour MPs. And then this endless speculation about how Rachel Reeves is going to fill this black hole. We're not quite sure what the size of it is. We'll find out at the budget. But how is she going to fill this black hole that's got bigger and more gaping since the Labour took office is a big question. And of course, there's inevitably been speculation about tax rises. But of course, the real problem is that Rachel Reeves has done nothing to quell those rumours. It does seem very much like government by speculation. They're just floating an idea here and another idea there and seeing how people react to it. Now, don't get me wrong, this is what ministers have done for ages past, putting an idea into the public domain and seeing how people respond to it and then deciding whether or not they're going to run with it. This is nothing new. But Rachel Reeves, it seems to me, has gone way beyond that in the past few days and weeks. She's actively fueled speculation. And then the bizarre speech she made about the budget, I mean, what was the point of that speech? She didn't actually say anything. All it actually actually did was fuel even more speculation. And now they're talking about tax rises not happening. But they're certainly going to be doing something on tax. There's no doubt about that. We've also heard in the last couple of days rumours about a so-called mansion tax, the idea that any home in band F or above, a council tax band F or above, is probably going to find itself revalued and earmarked for higher council tax in an attempt to raise 600 million. Again, it's speculation. We don't know what the facts will be, but that is going to annoy a huge amount of people. I'm just thinking about the village where I live. There's only one house in band F, and although it's a very lovely house with a lot of land, it's certainly not what you call a mansion, and it's not a stately home. So she's basically going to be targeting fairly ordinary people who've aspired to have a lovely property or perhaps have inherited one from their parents, but who are not necessarily the very wealthy that Labour keeps talking about wanting to tax. So it's all really a bit of a mess. You do wonder where the competence is here. And standing next to Keir speech when he made a speech, standing next to Keir Starmer when he made a speech earlier in the week, Rachel Reeves to me looked terrified. She was all over the place. She didn't look like a comfortable, happy woman. She looked absolutely terrified, very much on edge. And this budget is clearly taking its toll on her personally. It looks like that to me anyway. But it's also taking the toll on the rest of us. You know, when we had the U-turn on tax rises this week, the FTSE plummeted over 1%, over 100 points on Friday, on top of a similar fall on Thursday. So everybody's very agitated about it. Everybody's worried about it. I can't think of a budget in my lifetime that's been more anticipated with such depression, frankly.
No, and it could come down either way, couldn't it? It's almost as though any of the things they've been kite flying about over the last few weeks, they could go for any of them, because if you were Rachel Reeves, you'd be thinking, well, what's the least worst I can do, rather than what's the best for the country?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor, writing in Conservative Home this week, has said, you know, the Labour were talking before the election about growth, and what they've actually done is shrink. And I think he's really hit the nail on the head there, in my opinion. It's been a disaster. And the other thing, of course, is they say madness is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And this also seems to me what Labour is doing. They're constantly hiking taxes, constantly putting more pressure on workers to pay more on employers to pay more, and of course it's not working. All that's happening is inflation's going up because everybody's costs are going up, and people are leaving the country. The people with the money are leaving the country. Now, you might think at this time, a prudent economist might think, okay, so the tax hikes aren't working, maybe we should try some tax cuts to encourage investment. But that's just not on Labour's agenda. It's just completely outside their mindset. They've got this ideological hatred of so-called rich people, whatever that means, and they're just pushing ahead with that ideology regardless of the consequences. And I'm afraid it's going to get a lot worse. And it might not get better. It might change the government for it to get better.